Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell had seen many crime scenes in her 20-year career, but nothing prepared her for what awaited her on that cold Tuesday morning in March. The call came in at 6:47 a.m., just as she was finishing her second cup of coffee at her small flat in North London. A shooting incident in Mayfair, they said. High-profile location. Sensitive matter. Come immediately. The drive through London's morning traffic felt longer than usual. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities as she navigated the busy streets. Mayfair meant money, power, and, usually, complications. The kind of complications that made careers or destroyed them. She had worked hard to earn her position in the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Unit, and she wasn't about to let anything jeopardize that now. When she arrived at the scene, the street was already cordoned off with police tape. Officers in high-visibility jackets directed traffic away from the area, while forensic teams in white suits moved carefully around the perimeter. The building in question was an elegant Georgian townhouse, the kind that's sold for millions in this part of London. Its cream-colored facade and black iron railings spoke of old money and established power. Chief Inspector James Hartwell approached her as she stepped out of her car. His usually calm demeanor seemed strained, and Sarah immediately sensed the gravity of the situation. "Sarah, thank God you're here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We have a situation that requires your particular skills and discretion." "What exactly are we dealing with, sir?" Sarah asked, pulling on her jacket against the morning chill. Hartwell glanced around nervously before responding. "A shooting incident occurred here approximately 3 hours ago. One victim, currently in critical condition at St. Mary's Hospital. But, here's the thing, Sarah, the victim has connections that go all the way to the top. Royal connections." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Royal connections meant political pressure, media attention, and the kind of scrutiny that could make or break an investigation. "How high are we talking?" "Queen Camilla's son," Hartwell said quietly. Tom Parker Bowles was the intended target. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Tom Parker Bowles, the Queen Consort's son from her first marriage, was well known in London's social circles as a food critic and author. While not technically a member of the royal family, his connection to Queen Camilla made him a high-profile figure nonetheless. "Is he the one who was shot?" Sarah asked, her mind already shifting into professional mode. "No, that's where it gets complicated," Hartwell replied. "The actual victim is Michael Thompson, a private security consultant who was meeting with Parker Bowles at the time. Thompson took the bullet that was meant for Tom." Sarah absorbed this information quickly. "So we're looking at an assassination attempt on a royal family member, with an innocent bystander taking the hit instead." "Exactly. And, Sarah, this needs to be handled with the utmost care. The palace has already been informed, and there will be pressure from all sides to resolve this quickly and quietly." As they walked toward the crime scene, Sarah's mind was already working through the implications. An assassination attempt on British soil, targeting someone connected to the royal family, would have massive political and security ramifications. The investigation would be scrutinized by everyone from MI5 to the international media. The interior of the townhouse told a story of wealth and taste. Persian rugs covered polished hardwood floors, and oil paintings in gilt frames adorned the walls. It was clear that whoever owned this property had both money and connections. Sarah learned from the initial responding officers that the building belonged to Lady Margaret Sinclair, a prominent socialite and longtime friend of Queen Camilla. The shooting had occurred in the library on the ground floor. Bloodstains on the Persian carpet marked where Michael Thompson had fallen. Forensic photographers were documenting every angle, while investigators carefully collected evidence. The room's tall windows looked out onto a small garden, providing potential escape routes for the shooter. Detective Sergeant Robert Chen, Sarah's longtime partner, approached with his notebook in hand. Rob was methodical and thorough, qualities that had served their partnership well over the years. "What do we know about the sequence of events?" Sarah asked him. Rob consulted his notes. According to Lady Sinclair, Tom Parker Bowles arrived here at approximately 3:30 a.m. for what she described as a private consultation meeting. Michael Thompson accompanied him as his security detail. That's an unusual time for a meeting, Sarah observed. Agreed. Lady Sinclair claims it was necessary due to the sensitive nature of the discussion. She says they were meeting to discuss threats that Tom had been receiving over the past several weeks. Sarah's interest was immediately piqued. What kind of threats? That's where it gets interesting, Rob continued. According to preliminary statements, Tom had been receiving anonymous letters and emails over the past month. The messages were vague but menacing, suggesting that he was being watched and that harm would come to him if he didn't cease his activities. What activities? Nobody seems to know. Tom Parker Bowles leads a relatively public life as a food critic and author. He writes restaurant reviews, appears on television cooking shows, and attends social events. On the surface, nothing that would warrant death threats. Sarah processed this information. So someone wanted Tom dead, but we don't know why. And they were willing to break into a private residence in Mayfair to do it. That's the current theory. The shooter apparently entered through the garden at the rear of the property. They cut through a section of the wrought iron fence and approached the library windows. When they opened fire, Michael Thompson instinctively threw himself in front of Tom, taking 3 bullets to the chest and abdomen. The heroism of Michael Thompson's actions wasn't lost on Sarah. A man had potentially sacrificed his life to protect someone he was paid to guard. It spoke to both his professionalism and his character. "What's Thompson's condition?" she asked. "Critical but stable, according to the hospital. He's undergone emergency surgery and is currently unconscious. The doctors say it's touch and go, but he has a fighting chance." Sarah made a mental note to visit the hospital later. If Thompson survived, he would be their best witness to the events. He might have seen the shooter or noticed something that could provide crucial leads. And Tom Parker Bowles? Shaken but physically unharmed. He's been taken to a secure location for his own protection while we investigate. He was cooperative during initial questioning, but understandably traumatized by the experience. The investigation team spent the morning processing the crime scene. Bullet holes in the library wall indicated that the shooter had fired at least 6 rounds from what appeared to be a high-powered rifle. The precision of the shooting suggested someone with military or professional training. Sarah examined the point of entry in the garden. The cut in the iron fence was clean and precise, made with professional bolt cutters. The shooter had clearly planned this attack carefully, choosing a time when security would be minimal and escape routes would be readily available. What troubled Sarah most was the timing. 3:30 in the morning was an unusual hour for a social meeting, even among the wealthy elite of London. There had to be more to this story than Lady Sinclair and Tom Parker Bowles were revealing. As the day progressed, Sarah began building a timeline of events. Tom Parker Bowles had arrived at Lady Sinclair's residence at 3:30 a.m., accompanied by his security consultant Michael Thompson. They had been in the library for approximately 15 minutes when the shooting occurred. Lady Sinclair had been in her bedroom on the 2nd floor and claimed to have been awakened by the gunshots. The emergency services response had been swift. The first police units arrived within 6 minutes of Lady Sinclair's 999 call, followed quickly by ambulance crews. Tom Parker Bowles had been visibly distressed but coherent, while Thompson was unconscious and bleeding heavily. Sarah interviewed Lady Sinclair personally. The elderly woman was clearly shaken by the events but maintained her composure during questioning. She insisted that the meeting between herself, Tom, and Thompson had been arranged only the day before, and that very few people knew about it. "Tom contacted me yesterday afternoon," Lady Sinclair explained as they sat in her elegant drawing room. "He said he needed somewhere private to discuss the threats he'd been receiving. He wanted to meet with a security expert, and I offered my home as a neutral location." "Why the unusual hour?" Sarah asked. Tom was concerned about being followed. He felt that meeting in the early morning hours would provide better security. In hindsight, that decision may have saved his life. If they had met during normal business hours in a public location, the attack might have been more successful. Sarah found Lady Sinclair's explanation plausible but incomplete. there were still too many unanswered questions about the timing and circumstances of the meeting. As evening approached, Sarah received a call that changed everything. The forensics team had discovered something significant at the crime scene. Hidden among the books in Lady Sinclair's library, they had found a small recording device. The device had been professionally placed and was still operational when discovered. It had recorded the entire meeting between Tom Parker Bowles, Michael Thompson, and Lady Sinclair, as well as the shooting itself. Sarah rushed back to the police station to review the recording. What she heard in those files would reshape her understanding of the entire case. The recording revealed that the meeting had not been about general security threats, as initially claimed. Instead, Tom Parker Bowles had been discussing specific information that he believed someone was trying to suppress. He spoke of documents, photographs, and financial records that could embarrass powerful people. "I've stumbled onto something big, Margaret," Tom's voice said clearly on the recording. "Something that certain people would kill to keep quiet." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass and gunshots. Sarah could hear Michael Thompson shouting warnings, followed by the chaos of the attack itself. But it was what happened after the shooting that truly shocked Sarah. In the moments following the attack, while emergency services were being called, she could hear Lady Sinclair speaking to someone on her mobile phone. "It's done," Lady Sinclair's voice said quietly. But there were complications. Thompson was hit instead of the target. And there may be evidence that needs to be dealt with. Sarah stopped the recording and played that section again. Lady Sinclair had made that call while standing over Michael Thompson's bleeding body, while Tom Parker Bowles was in shock, and while claiming to be a victim herself. The implications were staggering. Lady Sinclair, the respected socialite and friend of Queen Camilla, was not just a witness to the assassination attempt. She was part of it. Sarah immediately called Chief Inspector Hartwell. This case had just become infinitely more complex and dangerous. If Lady Sinclair was involved in a plot against Tom Parker Bowles, then the conspiracy reached into the highest levels of British society. The recorded conversation suggested that someone wanted to silence Tom Parker Bowles because of information he possessed. But what information could be so damaging that it would justify attempted murder? And how far up the social and political hierarchy did this conspiracy reach? As Sarah sat in her office listening to the recording again, she realized that she was dealing with more than just an assassination attempt. This was about secrets, power, and the lengths that certain people would go to protect their positions. The investigation had taken on a new urgency. Michael Thompson was fighting for his life in the hospital, and Tom Parker Bowles remained a target. But now Sarah knew that the threat came not just from unknown assassins, but from people within Tom's own social circle. The case was no longer about protecting a member of the royal family from external threats. It was about uncovering a conspiracy that involved some of the most powerful people in Britain. And Sarah was beginning to understand that her own life might be in danger as well. The recording device in Lady Sinclair's library suggested that someone had been planning this operation for some time. The question was whether that someone had intended to capture evidence of the assassination, or whether the device had been placed by a different party altogether. As the night deepened, Sarah prepared for what she knew would be the most challenging investigation of her career. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the enemy she faced operated in the shadows of British high society. The firearm that had been pointed at Tom Parker Bowles was more than just a weapon. It was the tip of an iceberg that threatened to reveal corruption and conspiracy at the highest levels of power. And Sarah Mitchell was the only person standing between the truth and those who would kill to suppress it. Sarah Mitchell arrived at St. Mary's Hospital early the next morning, her mind still reeling from the previous night's discoveries. The recording from Lady Sinclair's library had revealed a conspiracy that went far deeper than anyone had initially suspected. But she needed more evidence, and Michael Thompson might be the key to unlocking the truth. The hospital corridors were quiet in the early hours, with only essential staff moving between wards. Sarah had arranged with the head of security to visit Thompson's room, despite the heavy police protection surrounding the wounded man. If he regained consciousness, his testimony could be crucial to the investigation. Detective Sergeant Rob Chen met her at the entrance to the intensive care unit. His expression was grim, and Sarah immediately sensed that something had happened during the night. Thompson's condition deteriorated around midnight, Rob informed her as they walked toward his room. The doctors had to perform emergency surgery again. Internal bleeding that they missed during the first operation. Will he survive? Sarah asked, dreading the answer. The doctors are cautiously optimistic, but it's still critical. However, there's something else you need to know. He regained consciousness briefly around 2 a.m. and asked to speak to the investigating officer. Sarah's pulse quickened. What did he say? He was barely coherent, but he kept repeating something about the photographs and Cowdray Park. The nurses said he seemed agitated, almost desperate to communicate something. Cowdray Park was a well-known location in West Sussex, famous for polo matches and high society events. Sarah wondered what connection it might have to the assassination attempt on Tom Parker Bowles. They reached Thompson's room, where 2 uniformed officers stood guard outside. Through the window, Sarah could see the unconscious man surrounded by medical equipment. Tubes and wires connected him to various machines that monitored his vital signs. He looked pale and fragile, a stark contrast to the heroic figure who had thrown himself in front of an assassin's bullets. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the lead intensive care physician, approached them with Thompson's medical chart in hand. She was a woman in her 50s with the kind of competent, no-nonsense demeanor that Sarah associated with the best medical professionals. Inspector Mitchell? Dr. Warren inquired. I understand you need to speak with Mr. Thompson when he regains consciousness. That's correct. How long before he might be able to answer questions? It's difficult to say. The trauma to his body has been severe, and we're still managing internal complications. However, if he does wake up, you'll need to keep any questioning very brief. His survival is still our primary concern. Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate balance between medical care and police work. Doctor, during his brief conscious period last night, did he say anything else beyond what my colleague mentioned? Dr. Warren consulted her notes. He was quite agitated and difficult to understand. However, the night nurse mentioned that he kept asking about someone named Diana. He seemed very concerned about her safety. This was new information that Rob hadn't mentioned. Sarah made a mental note to investigate who Diana might be and what connection she had to Michael Thompson or the case. We'll wait, Sarah decided. If his condition improves, I need to speak with him as soon as possible. While they waited for any change in Thompson's condition, Sarah decided to follow up on the other leads from the case. The recording device found in Lady Sinclair's library was being analyzed by the technical team, but there were other avenues to explore. She and Rob drove to Scotland Yard to review the background investigation that had been conducted on all parties involved. The information they had gathered painted a complex picture of relationships and potential motives. Lady Margaret Sinclair was 73 years old and had been a fixture in London society for decades. She had been married 3 times, each marriage ending with her inheriting substantial wealth. Her current net worth was estimated at over £50 million, derived from property investments and inherited assets. More interesting was her relationship with Queen Camilla. The 2 women had been friends since their youth, and Lady Sinclair had been a frequent guest at royal events even before Camilla's marriage to King Charles. This long-standing friendship gave her access to the highest levels of the royal household. Tom Parker Bowles's background was more straightforward. As a food critic and author, he lived a relatively public life. However, the investigation had revealed some interesting details about his recent activities. Look at this, Rob said, pointing to a section of the report. Tom Parker Bowles has been working on a new book project. According to his publisher, it's supposed to be about the history of British cuisine, but he's been researching some unusual topics. Sarah read over his shoulder. The publisher's statement indicated that Tom had been requesting access to historical archives, particularly documents related to major social events and gatherings from the past 30 years. He had also been interviewing elderly members of the aristocracy about their memories of significant occasions. What kind of significant occasions? Sarah asked. That's what's interesting. According to the notes here, he was particularly interested in private gatherings, charity events, and informal parties attended by members of the royal family and government officials. This information began to form a pattern in Sarah's mind. If Tom Parker Bowles had been researching historical social events involving powerful people, he might have uncovered information that certain individuals wanted to keep buried. The phone on Sarah's desk rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Dr. Warren from the hospital. Inspector Mitchell, Mr. Thompson has regained consciousness and is asking for you specifically. His condition has stabilized, and I can give you 10 minutes to speak with him. Sarah and Rob rushed back to the hospital. This time, Thompson was awake and alert, though obviously weak and in pain. His eyes tracked their movement as they entered the room, and Sarah could see intelligence and determination despite his physical condition. Mr. Thompson, I'm Detective Inspector Mitchell. Can you tell me what happened at Lady Sinclair's house? Thompson's voice was hoarse and barely above a whisper. It was a setup. She knew they were coming. Who was coming? Who shot you? Professional, military training. But that's not the important thing. Thompson paused, struggling with each word. Tom found something about Diana. Who is Diana? Sarah asked, leaning closer. Princess Diana. Tom found photographs. Documents. From before she died. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Princess Diana had died in 1997, but her death remained a subject of conspiracy theories and speculation. If Tom Parker Bowles had discovered new information about her, it could explain why someone would want him silenced. What kind of photographs? Sarah pressed gently. Thompson closed his eyes, clearly exhausted by the effort of speaking. Meetings, people who shouldn't have been together. Financial documents. Cowdray Park, the polo matches. Who was in these photographs? Government officials, foreign businessmen, money changing hands. Thompson's breathing became labored. Tom was going to expose everything. But they found out. Dr. Warren stepped forward, indicating that the questioning needed to end. But Thompson grabbed Sarah's arm with surprising strength. They'll try again, he whispered urgently. And, Diana, there's a Diana now. Tom's research assistant. She has copies of everything. You have to find her before they do. Thompson lost consciousness again, but he had given Sarah crucial information. Tom Parker Bowles hadn't just stumbled onto random corruption, he had uncovered evidence related to Princess Diana's final years, including what sounded like financial impropriety involving government officials and foreign nationals. Sarah immediately called Chief Inspector Hartwell to update him on these developments. The case had taken on international implications that went far beyond a simple assassination attempt. Sir, we need to find Tom Parker Bowles' research assistant immediately. According to Thompson, she has copies of all the evidence, and she's likely in danger. Understood. I'll arrange for additional resources. But, Sarah, this case is attracting attention from very high levels. I've had calls from the Home Office and even Downing Street. There's enormous pressure to resolve this quickly and quietly. What kind of pressure? The kind that suggests certain people would prefer this investigation to disappear entirely. Be very careful who you trust, and document everything you do. After ending the call, Sarah realized that she was now investigating not just an assassination attempt, but potentially a cover-up that involved the highest levels of British government and society. The threat to Tom Parker Bowles was real and ongoing, but there were also forces working to suppress the investigation itself. Rob had been researching Diana Whitfield, Tom Parker Bowles' research assistant. According to employment records, she was a 28-year-old graduate student in history at Cambridge University. She had been working with Tom for the past 6 months, helping him research his book project. I've been trying to contact her since yesterday, Rob reported. Her mobile phone goes straight to voicemail, and she hasn't been seen at her flat in Cambridge since Monday. Monday was the day before the shooting, Sarah noted. She disappeared before the attack. which suggests either she's hiding, or someone has already gotten to her. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. An innocent woman was missing, possibly dead, and Michael Thompson remained in critical condition. Meanwhile, the conspirators behind the attack were still free and likely planning their next move. The investigation team worked through the afternoon, following up on leads and trying to locate Diana Whitfield. Her disappearance from Cambridge had been sudden. She had left her flat without taking personal belongings or informing her landlord. Her car was found abandoned in a parking garage near King's Cross Station in London. As evening approached, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at Scotland Yard. Lady Sinclair arrived at the front desk, accompanied by an expensive-looking solicitor, requesting to make an additional statement about the shooting. Sarah agreed to meet with her, despite knowing that Lady Sinclair was likely involved in the conspiracy. Sometimes the best way to catch criminals was to let them reveal themselves through their own words. Lady Sinclair appeared composed and confident as she sat in the interview room. Her solicitor, a man named Geoffrey Pemberton from one of London's most prestigious law firms, advised her before she spoke. "Inspector Mitchell, I've come to provide additional information that might be helpful to your investigation," Lady Sinclair began. "I've been thinking about the events of yesterday, and I realize there were some details I may have overlooked in my initial statement." "What details?" Sarah asked, activating the recording equipment. "Tom Parker Bowles mentioned to me that he had been in contact with a young woman who was helping him with research. He was concerned about her safety and had asked her to remain hidden until the threat to him was resolved." This was a carefully crafted lie, Sarah realized. Lady Sinclair was trying to explain Diana Whitfield's disappearance in a way that didn't implicate her or her co-conspirators. "Did he mention where she was hiding?" Sarah asked. "He said she was staying with friends outside London, but he didn't provide specific details. He was very protective of her location." "Lady Sinclair, during our initial interview, you didn't mention this conversation about the research assistant. Why are you bringing it up now?" Lady Sinclair's solicitor shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but she maintained her composure. "I was in shock yesterday, Inspector. It's taken time for all the details to come back to me clearly." Sarah knew she was lying, but proving it would require more evidence. However, the fact that Lady Sinclair had come forward voluntarily suggested that she was worried about something. Perhaps the conspirators were beginning to panic as the investigation progressed. "Is there anything else you've remembered that might be relevant to our investigation?" "No, Inspector. I simply wanted to ensure that you had all available information to help find the person responsible for this terrible attack." After Lady Sinclair and her solicitor left, Sarah sat in her office reviewing everything they had learned. The conspiracy was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming more dangerous. Powerful people were involved, people with the resources and connections to make problems disappear. The evidence suggested that Tom Parker Bowles had uncovered financial impropriety connected to Princess Diana's final years. This information was valuable enough that someone was willing to commit murder to suppress it. Diana Whitfield, his research assistant, had copies of this evidence and was now missing. Sarah realized that the investigation had reached a critical point. They needed to find Diana Whitfield before the conspirators did, and they needed to uncover the full extent of the cover-up before more people were killed. As she prepared to leave the office, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was brief but chilling: "Stop looking for what cannot be found. Some secrets are worth dying for." The threat was clear, but it also confirmed that Sarah was on the right track. Someone was worried enough about the investigation to attempt intimidation. It meant they were getting close to the truth, and that made them even more dangerous to the people trying to hide it. Sarah forwarded the threatening message to the technical team for analysis, then headed home to her flat. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she needed to be prepared for whatever the investigation revealed next. The conspiracy surrounding the assassination attempt on Tom Parker Bowles was far from over, and Sarah Mitchell was now in the crosshairs herself. Sarah Mitchell woke at 4 a.m. to the sound of her doorbell ringing insistently. Through the peephole of her North London flat, she saw a young woman with dark hair, looking terrified and constantly glancing over her shoulder. Sarah recognized her immediately from the photographs they had obtained. This was Diana Whitfield, Tom Parker Bowles's missing research assistant.
"Please," Diana whispered urgently when Sarah opened the door. "They're coming for me.
I saw your name in the news reports about Tom.
You're the detective investigating the shooting."
Sarah quickly pulled Diana inside and locked the door behind her. The young woman was clearly exhausted and frightened, carrying only a small backpack and wearing clothes that looked like she had been sleeping rough.
"How did you find my address?" Sarah asked, leading Diana to her small kitchen. "I have friends in journalism. They helped me track you down. I couldn't go to a police station. I don't know who to trust anymore."
Diana's voice shook as she spoke. Sarah put the kettle on and studied the young woman carefully. Diana Whitfield was in her late 20s, with intelligent eyes that showed the strain of several days in hiding. She had the appearance of someone who had been running scared for some time.
"When did you last eat?" Sarah asked. "I can't remember. Maybe yesterday?"
I'd been too frightened to stay in one place long enough for a proper meal. While Sarah prepared food for Diana, the young woman began to tell her story. It was a tale that confirmed Sarah's worst suspicions about the conspiracy they were investigating. "I started working with Tom 6 months ago on what we thought was a simple book about British culinary history," Diana explained between bites of toast. "But Tom had always been interested in the social aspects of food, who ate with whom, where important deals were made over dinner, that sort of thing."
"That's when you discovered the connection to Princess Diana?" "Not initially.
We were researching historical dinner parties and charity events from the 1990s. Tom had access to private guest lists through his mother's connections. But then, we found something unusual." Diana reached into her backpack and pulled out a tablet computer.
"I've got everything here. Copies of documents, photographs, financial records.
Everything Tom discovered."
Sarah's pulse quickened. This evidence could be the key to solving the entire case. "Show me," Sarah said.
Diana opened the tablet and navigated to a folder labeled Cowdray Park Research. Inside were dozens of files containing photographs, scanned documents, and detailed notes. "It started with the polo matches," Diana explained.
"Tom was researching a chapter about outdoor dining and sporting events. Cowdray Park hosts polo matches that are attended by royalty, government officials, and international businesspeople. The first set of photographs showed various polo matches from the mid-1990s.
Sarah recognized several faces: government ministers, wealthy businessmen, and members of the royal family enjoying the social atmosphere of the sporting events. "Look at this series from July 1997, Diana said, opening another folder.
"Just a few weeks before Princess Diana died. The photographs from that event showed Princess Diana at what appeared to be a private dinner following a polo match.
She was seated at a table with several men that Sarah didn't immediately recognize."
"Who are these people?" Sarah asked.
"That's where it gets interesting," Diana replied.
"Tom spent weeks identifying everyone in these photographs. The man sitting to Diana's left is Viktor Petrov, a Russian businessman who was later investigated for money laundering.
The man across from her is Sir Richard Blackwood, who was then a senior Treasury official." Sarah studied the photographs more carefully. The dinner appeared informal, but the combination of people was unusual. Princess Diana rarely appeared at private business dinners, especially with foreign nationals of questionable reputation.
"There's more," Diana continued, opening another file.
Tom found financial records that suggest money was being moved through various accounts connected to these people. Large sums, in the millions of pounds. The financial documents were complex, but even Sarah's untrained eye could see the pattern of money moving between accounts in Britain, Russia, and several offshore banking havens. The dates on the transactions clustered around the time of the polo match dinner.
"What was Princess Diana's connection to this financial activity?" Sarah asked.
"That's what we were trying to figure out when everything went wrong." Tom believed that Diana had unknowingly become involved with people who were using her reputation and connections for money laundering operations.
This revelation put an entirely new perspective on the assassination attempt.
If Tom Parker Bowles had discovered evidence of financial crimes involving Princess Diana, it would be explosive information that could damage reputations and possibly lead to criminal prosecutions.
How did the conspirators find out about your research? Sarah asked. Diana's expression darkened.
We think someone was monitoring Tom's communications. Over the past month, he had been contacting various people to verify the identities in the photographs and to understand the financial transactions. Someone must have realized what he was investigating.
That's when the threats started?
Yes.
Anonymous emails and letters warning Tom to stop his research. At first, we thought they might be from conspiracy theorists who didn't want anyone questioning the official story of Diana's death.
But then, Tom received a phone call.
What kind of phone call?
A man with a Russian accent told Tom that certain information was better left buried. He said that Princess Diana had died because she knew too much, and that Tom would meet the same fate if he continued his investigation.
Sarah felt a chill at this revelation.
If the threat was real, it suggested that Princess Diana's death might not have been the accident that official investigations had concluded.
Did Tom report these threats to the police?
He was afraid to. The caller had mentioned specific details about Tom's research that suggested they had inside information. Tom worried that there might be people within the government or police who were involved in the cover-up. This explained why Tom had arranged the secret meeting with Michael Thompson at Lady Sinclair's house. He had been seeking security advice while trying to stay below the radar of the very authorities who should have protected him.
Diana, why did you disappear before the shooting? Sarah asked. Tom sent me away on Sunday night.
He said he had received another threatening call, and this time the caller had mentioned me by name. Tom was terrified that they would target me to get to him.
Where have you been hiding? Friends from university have been helping me. We've been moving every few hours, never staying in one place for long.
But, yesterday, I saw news reports about the shooting and realized that Tom's fears had been justified. Sarah studied the documents on Diana's tablet more carefully. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. If verified, it would suggest that Princess Diana had been manipulated by money launderers in the final weeks of her life, and that her death might have been connected to her discovery of their activities. Diana, this evidence needs to be examined by forensic accountants and intelligence experts.
Are you willing to cooperate with a full investigation?
That's why I came to you.
But, I'm scared.
If they tried to kill Tom, and if they really were involved in Princess Diana's death, then they won't hesitate to eliminate me to protect themselves.
Sarah understood Diana's fear.
They were dealing with people who had vast resources and no apparent moral constraints. The conspiracy reached into the highest levels of British society and possibly international criminal networks. I'm going to arrange for you to be taken to a safe location, Sarah decided. We need to verify this evidence, and we need to keep you alive while we do it. Sarah called Chief Inspector Hartwell and explained the situation.
Within an hour, Diana Whitfield was in protective custody at a secure location outside London.
Her evidence was being examined by specialists in financial crimes and intelligence analysis.
The implications of Diana's revelations were staggering.
If Tom Parker Bowles had uncovered evidence of money laundering involving Princess Diana, it would explain the extreme measures taken to silence him. But it also raised questions about Diana's death that went far beyond the scope of Sarah's current investigation.
By midday, Sarah received preliminary analysis of the financial documents from Diana's tablet.
The patterns were consistent with sophisticated money laundering operations, involving the movement of approximately £50 million through various accounts between 1995 and 1997.
More disturbing was the timeline.
The financial activity appeared to peak in the summer of 1997, just before Princess Diana's death in Paris. If Diana had discovered what was happening and threatened to expose the operation, it might have provided a motive for silencing her permanently.
Sarah met with Rob Chen to discuss the latest developments.
The case had evolved from a simple assassination attempt into something that could potentially rewrite history.